Hello and welcome to my video where I'm going to show you how to knit T2B and T2F cables. These cables have a few different names including C2B and C2F and 1/1 RPC or Right Purl Cross and 1/1 LPC or Left Purl Cross. They all mean the same thing, which is that these are two-stitch cables where a knit stitch is passed over a purl stitch. The only difference between them is that one of the cables travels to the left and the other travels to the right. And because you're passing a knit over a purl, that usually means you're making these cables on a reverse stockinette stitch background. Today I'll be showing you 3 different ways to make these cables, 1 with a cable needle and 2 without. Many people find it too time consuming and awkward to use a cable needle for such small cables, but really it's up to you, it's down to your preference. I'm going to be demonstrating using a diamond cable pattern, which I've demonstrated in another video. Right, so I'm going to start by showing you the T2B or 1/1 RPC. For this method you'll need a cable needle, and it should be a similar diameter to the knitting needles you're using. All you need to do is take the short end of the cable needle, slip a stitch off the left hand needle purlwise onto it, and hold that cable needle at the back. With the working yarn at the back, just knit a stitch from the left hand needle, and then bring the working yarn between the needles to the front and purl a stitch off the cable needle. You want to use the long side of the cable needle to do this. This is the bit that can be a bit awkward and why people like to avoid using a cable needle. And that's a T2B cable completed. So what we've done is carry a knit stitch over a purl stitch to create a cable that travels to the right. And now I'll show you how to knit the T2F or 1/1 LPC cable, which is very similar. Again, you use the short side of the cable needle to slip a stitch from the left hand needle purlwise, like so, but this time you keep the cable needle at the front. Then, making sure the working yarn is at the front, you purl a stitch from the left hand needle, as normal, and then you take the working yarn between the needles to the back, and then knit the stitch off the long side of the cable needle. And that's the T2F cable completed. So what we've done is carry a knit stitch over a purl stitch to create a cable that travels to the left. And then we're on to method number 2, which is my favourite. I'm pretty confident you'll find this method a lot quicker and more efficient than the first method. Right, so to make the T2B cable, you first need to take the right hand needle in front of the left hand needle, take it down through the front of the second stitch, hold those first 2 stitches at the base, slide them off the left hand needle, and then put the left hand needle back into the now available stitch. Then transfer the stitch from the right hand needle back to the left hand needle, purlwise. You've now swapped the position of those 2 stitches. Make sure the working yarn is at the back and knit a stitch. Then bring the working yarn between the needles to the front and purl a stitch. And that's another T2B cable completed. Hopefully you can now see that this method is a lot quicker and more efficient than the one with the cable needle. To use the same method to make the T2F or 1/1 LPC cable, you instead take the right hand needle behind the left hand needle, take it down through the back of the second stitch, hold those first 2 stitches at the base, slide them off the left hand needle, and then put the left hand needle back into that now available stitch. Then transfer the stitch from the right hand needle back to the left hand needle, purlwise. You've now swapped these two stitches around. Then make sure the working yarn is at the front and purl a stitch, and then take the working yarn to the back and knit a stitch. And that's another T2F cable completed. And now for the third way to make the T2B cable, you first need to knit into the front of the second stitch. So take the right hand needle up through the front of that second stitch and over the first stitch. You want to try and avoid that first stitch completely. Then you do all of the usual steps of a knit stitch, making sure you only bring one strand of yarn through to the front. But at this point you don't slip the stitch off the needle. Instead you bring the working yarn between the needles to the front and purl a stitch. And when you slip this stitch off the needle, you slip the second stitch off as well. And that's another T2B cable completed. Then to use this method to make the T2F cable instead, you first need to make sure the working yarn is at the front, then you need to purl the second stitch through the back loop. So you take the right hand needle up through the back of that second stitch and over the first stitch. Then do all of the usual steps of a purl stitch, making sure you only bring one strand of yarn through to the back, but you don't slip this stitch off the needle. Instead, you take the working yarn between the needles to the back and knit a stitch. And when you slip this stitch off the needle, you slip the second stitch off as well. And that's another T2F completed. And here you can see the resulting cables. Here you can see the T2B cable travelling to the right and the T2F cable travelling to the left. And that's it, that's 3 ways of knitting the T2B and T2F cables. I really hope you found this useful and thank you very much for watching.